Welcome back, everybody. This is Pierre Camus, the Roto Chef here at RotoBaller to help you with your lineup decisions for Week 5 at running back. Tell you the 3 guys that I like that I think you absolutely must start that aren't already in your lineup, besides the obvious calls. And then some guys I think that you must sit if you were considering kind of on the fence, flex them out or not. I'm going to tell you just don't do it, and I'm going to tell you why. So let's get started with the guy that it's hard to gauge each and every week what to do with Leonard Fournette. We really don't know what to do with that Tampa Bay backfield ever. Well, we got some clarity because Giovanni Bernard being hurt has, kind of put Fournette into the main pass catching role, and that makes sense because Ronald Jones just can't do it. All right, but also Fournette is the guy who, for the most part, is on the field getting the carries too. Ronald Jones, just hasn't been on the field much since that fumble early in the season, and he just never seems to be a favorite of Bruce Arians for whatever reason. He was effective a lot of times last year, but this year it seems like it's all Fournette, and that was including Week 4 where Fournette went for 139 total yards on 23 touches. And so Fournette is the guy who's going to get the receptions, so he carries actually somewhat of a floor for the first time. And I know Ronald Jones snuck in the end zone last week, but for the most part, Fournette's the guy who will get the ball in the red zone. And going against the Miami Dolphins, who we thought was a good defense, and, well, nothing's really good in Miami these days. They are bottom 3 run defense as of right now in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs, and still without Tua. And so this is a team that's just probably not going to put up enough resistance to Tampa Bay. Look for another strong game for Fournette. I think he's definitely in the top 25 running backs for sure this week, so keep him in your lineups. Ronald Jones, that's a different story. That's more of a desperation play, but Fournette, I think you should feel really good about. Now, Damien Harris is a guy I usually feel good about if the matchup is right. Felt a little too good about him back earlier in the season. In Week 2, I was starting to call him a must start every week, and that's just not the case. We know that the Patriots, you can't start any running back every single week. But for real, Damien Harris is a guy who is very, very game script dependent. He's just not a pass-catching back. Not that he can't do it. They just don't feel comfortable using him in that role. He's seen a small uptick in that ever since James White was out for the season. But you're going to see a lot more Brandon Bolden these days. He's the guy who suddenly is going to become fantasy relevant because Ramondre Stevenson also is not a guy who's a pass catcher, and they just don't seem to trust him either. But as far as Harris goes, yeah, he'll see a couple of catches here and there now, but still, he just doesn't have the floor. If, the Patriots are down big, we'll see him disappear. And the last 2 weeks, it just so happens the Patriots have faced the 2 best run defenses in the league, and he got totally scripted out of the game, was complete non-factor, literally no rushing yards last week. And now we're going to flip the script. I told you, must sit last week. Hopefully you listened. Now you have to start him this week because it's the complete opposite going against the Houston Texans, and the Texans allowing the 3rd most rushing yards per carry, 4.96 yards per carry. That's definitely going to work in Harris's benefit. Of course, we don't expect a lot of opposition from the Texans, not going to put up a lot of points against that Patriots defense. So the Patriots can afford to actually run and feed Harris, and I think that he should do just fine in this game. So bottom line, Harris should get plenty more carries. I know the last 2 weeks were just terrible. You feel like dropping him. Don't drop him. You just have to bench him in those games where they have those negative matchups. But the Patriots actually have a pretty good schedule going forward. A lot more of those AFC East teams back on the schedule, Buffalo aside. They will get to face, of course, the Dolphins and the Jets too. So keep Harris, keep him around, but definitely start him this week. And then, we got to talk about Cordarrelle Patterson, the receiver who plays running back. He qualifies at both, but of course you're putting him in as running back because that's where you're going to need him. But he's really going to be a glorified receiver again this week, especially if you heard Calvin Ridley is out. Russell Gage also, for what it's worth, not going to London. Well, what does that leave the Falcons with? I mean, this is already a receiving core that was basically Calvin Ridley and a bunch of guys. And now you have Kyle Pitts, who everyone's predicting the Pitts breakout. We've been predicting that for the last couple of weeks, and it hasn't happened. Getting a lot of targets, but still just not doing a lot with them. Who's the guy who's really their best receiver? It's Cordarrelle Patterson, and he happens to play running back also, but his main production is as a wide receiver. He has 119 rushing yards in the year, 235 receiving yards. So I know everyone's saying sell high, it's not going to last, flip them, don't get carried away. of course, he's not going to do what he's been doing. He's not going to score 3 touchdowns every game. I know the touchdown regression might come. It won't come this week. It won't. He has a really good chance to score, and he has a really good chance to lead this team in receptions, yards, everything. You absolutely have to start him. Hopefully you didn't sell too early on him, because this could be another monster week for Patterson. All right, so now let's get to some of the must-sits, guys, that I don't feel too good about. You can't feel too good about either Broncos running back, really either week, because it just doesn't, it's hard to tell who is going to pop and who is going to get more work, because it's really the same. Essentially, this season, it's a 50-50 split, okay? And we know that almost every backfield in the NFL is a timeshare. There's some sort of a, either even split, or there's a guy who has a lot of work, but sometimes we'll see something like in Arizona where, like James Conner is going to be the guy who gets the ball in the red zone and the money zone. He's going to get the short yardage carries, and we know Chase Edmonds is going to get all the catches. Okay, with Denver, it is identical. Both guys are getting the exact same amount of work, but also the same type of work. So Melvin Gordon so far is averaging 12.8 rush attempts per game. Javonte Williams, 11.5. So on the ground the same, and they're both averaging exactly 2 catches per game. So it's not like one guy's getting more work as a receiver, one guy has the floor and another guy has the ceiling. It is dead even. So hard to trust either guy in terms of having that really tangible ceiling, I should say. Going against Pittsburgh, again, a top 10 run defense, this is not good enough. We just don't see a lot of upside. I mean, you're really hoping for a touchdown. There's little chance. As long as Gordon still plays, he's going to cut into Williams' value. And we are hearing that Melvin Gordon will play this week. I know he's been banged up last couple weeks in practice. I mean, I hate to say it, you're almost hoping as a Javonte Williams owner, you're really kind of hoping that Gordon sits out one of these days just so we have some clarity and maybe Williams gets to go off. But for now, you just can't trust either guy to get enough work to be fantasy viable. So in a really tough matchup, you just have to sit them both. I'm actually going to say the same thing for the 49ers, kind of a different reason. It's been a different guy, right? The first 2 weeks is Elijah Mitchell. Trey Sermon wasn't even active week 1, and then got exactly 1 carry the next week before he got concussed. And then we've seen Mitchell is out, so it's been all Trey Sermon. And he's been okay, not doing bad. I think 89 yards on 19 carries. He's not playing badly. He's just not really doing a lot for your fantasy team. He's not catching passes, not scoring. So, again, the ceiling is just not there. So this isn't a case of, timeshare. It's not a bad offense. You want a piece of this offense, but you know what? I'm kind of done with the 49ers and trying to guess who's going to go off each week. It's really, if you think, well, it's just you trying to avoid the headache of who to start. Yeah, I am. I really am, because I don't want to put in the guy that then gets no work, hoping Elijah Mitchell comes back and does something, thinking that Trey Sermon will finally go off. I'm just kind of done with it, but also you cannot trust either one in your lineup. And so I would rather get sure points from somebody else. And it's not like this is a tremendous matchup this week for them either. So I'm just going to pass on both 49ers running back. Whoever the 49ers running back is, of the day, I almost don't even care anymore, at least not right now. And then Miles Sanders, you know what? Had him as a must-sit before. Probably going to do it again. Been saying you probably shouldn't have drafted him at where he was going, and you probably should have traded him early while his value was at its peak, because it's never going to get there again. He's been outscored on the season by Kenneth Gainwell in PPR because Gainwell's getting those receptions, and Sanders hasn't broken one of his big runs yet for a touchdown like he has, last year. He had these 3 long runs that kind of buoyed his value. He's not doing that either, and now he's seeing his work go down. The last 2 weeks, facing negative game script against teams that are putting up mad points against the Eagles. Well, this week they get Carolina. Carolina looks pretty good. Look, are they going to score like the Chiefs or like the Cowboys? No, probably not that much. Can we be sure that the Eagles are going to be dead even with them going throughout the game, that Sanders is going to be able to establish himself on the ground? No, I don't feel good about that. I don't think we can put any stock into Sanders as far as being a fantasy asset right now, because the floor is literally 0. So at this point in a bad matchup, I'm keeping Sanders on my bench if I had him, which I don't. All right, so that's start sit for running backs in week 5. Going to do wide receivers also. So check that out right here on RotoBaller, and check out our constantly updated rankings each and every day, fresh for you to help you win. All right, thanks for watching.